Hello, Easy Nation, and welcome to a new special video. So one of the books here, one of the big parts of this channel is I read the Star Wars canon books. Mostly I read them during when sports is going on, and so I'll read, then a commercial goes on, and then I'll continue the book. So I have read 37 of the canon Star Wars books. And just so you don't know, if you don't know, Star Wars canon is any book that came out from 2014. So the old books of Heir to the Empire, the Darth Revan, Darth Bane books, those were discontinued. Those stories happened, it's just now they're considered legends. So they have not been canonized yet by Lucasfilm and Disney. And so what I'm doing, this is going to be part of my annual videos. At the end of the year, I always have my movie collection videos, my top 10 movies, top 10 TV shows, and top 10 anticipated with Randy Cage. Those were the last three videos. First two videos and first video of the year. So this is going to be the first video of what I like to call Darth Easy Palooza. So this is going to be me just ranking the books that I have read. I have not read every canon book. I counted my bookshelf today. I still have about 14 books I have not read. I'm reading one right now. I might get done before the end of the year. I may not. But I'm really liking it, and it will be probably very high as long as the trajectory is going in the book. But with that being said, let's begin this very cool video of me talking about Star Wars. Because I love talking about Star Wars. So the worst Star Wars book that I read was Star Wars Heir of the Jedi. This book's not that good. It's set between episodes 4 and 5. Luke is trying to figure out how to be a Jedi because he really didn't get much instruction from Ben Kenobi. He meets this girl. They go on this journey. He finds some lightsaber. It's not a good book. This is the third book that came out in the original run of the canon books. It's just not that great of a book. Next, I have Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good. This is book 2 of the Thrawn Ascendancy series. This book did not keep my interest, and that's part of it. There's a lot of scenes in this book where Thrawn is not involved at all, and that kind of bothered me as a big Thrawn fan. So I throw it towards the bottom of my rankings. Next, I have Star Wars High Republic Into the Dark. Into the Dark was a very interesting novel. It introduced some really interesting stuff. Unfortunately, I could not really get myself involved in the YA-ness of this book. I really did like Reese Stiles, which the current book I'm reading is really interesting with him in it. But as a book overall, I could not get into it, and it might have hurt that I didn't read it when it released, because I read the first 3 adult novels, and then I started with the YA, so it was hard to get into. Star Wars Last Shot was a tie-in novel between the Solo movie mixed with with post Return of the Jedi. This book is an absolute mess, and it's hard to follow the book because we're going from the past, we're going to we're going from the Lando and L3 side of the story, then we're going to Han and Chewie with Sana Solo, then we're going post Return of the Jedi. The book's a lot and it's a mess, and it did not hold my interest, and I remember it took me a very long time to finish this book. Next, we have Thrawn Alliances. The cool part about this book is Thrawn and Darth Vader team up on a mission to Batuu, which is the planet which they base at Galaxy Edge off of at Disney World - Disneyland. So that was interesting that Batuu, they made the actual Disney World place an actual ride. So that's very interesting. Overall, though, the book did not hold my interest. Next, we have Aftermath, the first Aftermath book. And it got better from Aftermath, but this book was a struggle to get through. And I had bought this book years, I think when it first came out, I think I saw it at Walmart. And I finally went into read the book. And it was interesting, especially with some of the things with Ray Sloan and how they're trying to revive the Empire after the Battle of Endor. But overall, Aftermath just was not my favorite book. Next, we have High Republic Defy the Storm. This one, it's basically Vanessa Rowe. She teams up with 2 of the characters from the Out of the Shadows. I like when the High Republic focuses in on the Jedi characters, because I like the Jedi characters a lot more than the non-Jedi characters. And this one, it was just I was waiting for it to end, and that's been my problem with a lot of the YA books in the Star Wars series. So Path of Deceit just for me just wasn't that interesting. You know, I'm not that interested, and that is Act Out of the Shadows. Very similarly, it has a lot of those characters from Path of Deceit, and basically they're trying to go after this Nile space station. The Grey Heart, I believe that was what it was, and one of the characters' his daughter. She's a daughter of a scientist who has went over to the Nile side. So that kind of interesting, but why I rank this over the Path of Deceit mostly because I really like Ray Stiles, and then I also really like Vanessa Rowe, which is a really cool Jedi character, but that's really the only thing that held my interest in this book. Now we have Star Wars: A New Dawn. I really like A New Dawn. I like that it helped me as a Star Wars fan because this was the first canon novel, and it basically introduced Kanan and Hera. But Kanan, he's a drunk. He's he's just working his way away. He's trying to stay hidden, trying to forget his Jedi past. And then him and Hera get together and they they go against a young Ray Sloane shows up in this book as well. This is when, for me, it starts to get like, okay, these books are starting to get a little more interesting. So, A New Dawn is it's a very enjoyable book. Not my favorite book, but still very enjoyable. Next, we have Path of Vengeance. This book is basically two Jedi they're looking into the path of the open hand. You have the mother, and then this is where because this is like set before Light of the Jedi. This book was a little bit of a struggle to read, I'll be honest, but I did find myself, especially the end, and then whenever you see the lightsaber at the end, it was a very interesting book. Next, we have Path of Deceit, which was a follow-up to Path of Vengeance. I believe that's what the last book was called. Yeah, Path of Vengeance, or Path of Deceit. So, this one basically follows that up, and it kind of goes side by side with Catalysm about kind of gives you the path of the open hands row and how they involved and the use of the Nameless a little bit and how the Nameless are controlled. So for the overall High Republic narrative, that's why I put this book a little higher than Path of Deceit and A New Dawn. But to be honest with you, I prefer New Dawn again over this one. So, but to know the overall narrative is very interesting. Next we have Shadow of the Sith. Shadow of the Sith was interesting, and it helped tie in some pieces to Rise of Skywalker. Now, is Rise of Skywalker my favorite Star Wars movie? No, but I did recently rewatch Rise of Skywalker, and this book did help. It's still a turd, but at least it's a little shinier now. But it was interesting. I did like reading stuff about Luke, and it's just not the Luke we got in the movies. And it was also cool to see what Lando was doing, why he was out in the desert. He was looking for his daughter who'd been kidnapped by the First Order. Next we have Battle Scars. This is a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order book. This ties in between Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi, I forget what the sequel book was called. I actually read this after I beat the game. But I really did enjoy the book. It's very short. You get to see the characters. You see the beginning of them starting to fall apart as a crew, and also they go against Inquisitors again. And the book's a lot about Mara, which made it very interesting. It's not a great book, but if you like the games, you feel like you know the characters, and that was really cool. Next, we have High Republic Midnight Horizon. I really like this book, and it's one of those that I kind of breezed through. I didn't really breeze. I started really strong. I slowed down because it was midway between the sports season, so I stopped. Then I started back up, and basically the stuff with the Starlight Beacon falling is going on at the same time. But basically, the Jedi are trying to stop the Nile from taking over Corellia, and it's just a very interesting book, and the ending was very, very interesting with this book. So Midnight Horizon is a very, very enjoyable book. Next we have Bloodline, and this was a Force Awakens tie-in book. I believe this takes place after. I believe this came out after Force Awakens, but it's basically about Leia as she was a senator, how her past gets brought up. That she's found out to be the daughter of Darth Vader, where she knew that, but now the rest of the Senate knows, and also how she becomes the general of the Resistance and the beginning of the First Order. So Bloodline is a very good book. There's also a really cool senator character who she has to form a bond with to help her out. So Bloodline was really good. Next we have Aftermath: Empire's End. This is the third and final book of the series, and this basically ends with the Battle of Jakku, how the Empire goes into hiding, race alone, basically setting up the seeds of the New Order. You have a young General Hux's father, who you see in The Mandalorian. This was a very, very good book, and I did really enjoy it. And then we have Aftermath: Life Debt. This one, you have the team from the Aftermath crew. They join up with Han to basically rescue Chewie, and that's why it's called Life Debt. And it's just such a good book. This one I couldn't put down. Next we have Star Wars Thrawn. This book I was really mad when I got it because I was at Star Wars Celebration and Timothy Song was signing books for Star Wars Thrawn, and I was wanting to get the book because it came out that weekend. But they didn't have any Thrawn books, and I couldn't get my book signed. So that was kind of sad that I couldn't get Timothy Song, who's one of the best Star Wars writers. Timothy Song is the original guy who wrote Thrawn back for Enter the Empire. This basically shows of how he joined the Empire, how he goes through the ranks, how he eventually becomes a Grand Admiral. This is a very, very good book, and I love the psyche of Thrawn. I think this book does, other than maybe some of the Thrawn Ascendancy books, does a really good job of showing how he was. So Thrawn is such a good Star Wars book, and very good, interesting character. Next we have High Republic: Eye of Darkness. This was really interesting because they had Phase 3, which Phase 2 was set after Starlight Beacon and fell, but now we're back into the main plot storyline of the High Republic. The Storm Wall, which is a hyperspace barrier, which keeps the Republic out of Nile territory, and you have Avar Kriss, who is probably one of my favorite Star Wars Jedi characters ever. And how she is, she's in hiding. She's trying to do good where she can. You have Porter Engle, who is on his own journey, and this is such a good book. It's a very good book, and the ending is very interesting as well, and especially seeing some of the other characters. His journey through the book. It's a very good one. Next we have Star Wars Brotherhood. This takes place right after the events of Attack of the Clones, how some of the Jedi Padawans become Jedi Knights. You have Obi-Wan and Anakin had to learn to be more than just, they had to move past the fatherhood, like the master and apprentice, and become brothers, which is what you see in the Clone Wars series. And I think this is a really good tie-in from Attack of the Clones to the Clone Wars series. I really dug this book, and also they're on Cato Nemoria, or Cato Nemodia, which is where the Trade Federation, which, in the Clone Wars series, they're like, oh no, we're not involved, but we're totally involved. So this is a very, very interesting book. We have book 1 of the Thrawn Ascendancy series. I really dug this book. This is basically, you show the origin story of Grand Admiral Thrawn, or as his real name, Mith Niraldo, which was very interesting. You see some other characters as well. There's this female character that's also very good. I love Thrawn Ascendancy. I like all 3 of the books were very interesting. The second one was a harder read, but book 1 was amazing. Next we have Thrawn Treason. This is the third and final of the Thrawn series. This takes place right before the events of it, basically in Star Wars Rebels, when Thrawn is called to defend his mission to get money for his starfighters. That's where he's doing, and then you also have Orson Krennic in there from Rogue One. This is a very good book as well, and Thrawn's loyalty is tested because the Chiss show up, and also his apprentice, or the one that he helped nurture a lot, Eli Banto shows back up in this book as well. I really like this book. I'm hoping what they do in Mandalorian or when they bring Thrawn back in whatever series it is, that we get to see a little more of him. So that'd be kind of cool. Star Wars, or The Fallen Star, The High Republic. This is the third book of the adult series. This is basically the Titanic. Because Starlight Beacon falls down, which was this great pillar for Jedi knowledge, where it was basically a space base for the Jedi in the Outer Rim. This was a great book, and when characters die, you feel it. And this was, like I said, one of very, very good book. I like the other two better, obviously, because I haven't talked about them yet, but this one's really good too. Next, I have Master and Apprentice. Master and Apprentice is basically about Qui-Gon, how him and Obi-Wan don't really get along. He's trying to become a good teacher for his young Padawan, and he's an opportunity to become a member of the Jedi Council, and then also about one of Count Dooku's other apprentices before Qui-Gon did. Master and Apprentice it's a really good book. And it was also written by Claudia Gray, which is one of my favorite new Star Wars authors. Next, we have Temptation of the Force. This is one of the more recent of the High Republic I've read. And this is basically, it's a love story. Avar Kriss and, I forget what the guy's name is. Elzar Mann, they make it official. They hook up, and but they're trying to bring down the storm wall, and then the things with the blight, like this plague, it's going on, and you're just like, man. And it really sets itself up for a really good finale. So, Temptation of Force, very good book. And also, one thing I also really enjoyed was that it brought in storylines from the young adult novel. So, I feel like all that stories that I've read isn't going to waste. So, I think Temptation of Force did a really good job of tying both adult and the young adult novels together. Next, we have Convergence, and this is technically the earliest book in the Star Wars timeline that I have read. Basically, you have these two planets, Irium and Irium and Endor. They are at war with each other, and there's this political relationship or marriage to get these planets to stop going. Because I believe it's called the 100-Year War in the books, but you have some really interesting characters between this main Jedi character, Axel Greylark, I believe that's the character's name. Yes, and the characters they created in this book was so good. I absolutely endured Convergent, because I saw some people talked about it when it first came out that it wasn't that good, but I fell in love with it. Next we have Thrawn Ascendancy, The Lesser Evil. Very good book. Really fitted in towards the end of the Thrawn series, and basically helps us tie into where he ends up for how he ends up in the first Thrawn book. I really dug this book, and also the threat of the I think it was the Grisk, the Grisk, and how that's why Thrawn joins the Empire to help get the galaxy ready for this ongoing threat. I'm hoping they can tie some of that into the Mandalorian New Republic storylines. Next we have Dark Disciple. Dark Disciple was storylines written by, I believe, George Lucas's daughter. And it was storylines that were supposed to be for the Clone Wars, but Clone Wars got canceled due to Disney acquiring a Star Wars. So they turned Christina Godin, who's a really good author as well. She took those storylines and made a book out of it. And then in the end of the book, she dies, but then she shows up in Bad Batch. So canon, it's very loose looking. But also you see Boss, who is a really cool Jedi character. Next, I have Tarkin. Tarkin is the second book I read in the Star Wars canon, and I absolutely love Tarkin. Such a cool character. He's the guy who was just the official who was kept Vader in line, but you kind of get a little bit more of a history of Tarkin, how he grew up. The planet is a more rough planet that he grew up on. It's such an interesting book, and Vader shows up, and they have this partnership, and Thrawn has a suspicion of who he is, just like how Tarkin kind of has a suspicion of who Vader is, and how the one cool part of that Thrawn book with Vader in it was Thrawn knew who Vader was because he knew how Vader flew his ship. He said I flew just exactly how Anakin Skywalker flew it. So Tarkin, very good book. I've read bits and pieces of it once or twice, so I really like that one. Next we have Catalyst, which is James Luceno, one of my favorite authors. He did both that Tarkin and Catalyst, but he also wrote Darth Plagueis, a Legends book, which is very good. Even though it's not canon, it's still worth a read. But Catalyst is basically sets up Rogue One about it's basically the Manhattan Project of the Death Star, how it was being built in the Clone Wars, and then it was being, Galen Erso was trying to get away. Very good book. Very enjoyable. It really helped. I read that one quickly because it was right before Rogue One. Next, we have Princess and the Scoundrel. This is a romance novel, basically, between Han Solo and Leia. After the Battle of Endor, they decide to get married. They get married in Endor. They go on a cruise, but duty always calls. And Princess and Scoundrel was a very good book. Beth Revis did a really good job in this book. I read this book last year when I was on vacation, and I couldn't put it down. This is one of the more recent books I have finished, and that is Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade. This is a fantastic book, and it tells a story about this character who never really fit in with the Jedi, how she kind of gave in to a little more of her darker urges, how she became an Inquisitor and started using the dark side, and then her eventual end. This is a very beginning end book, and that's what's cool, and it throws in characters, it throws in storylines from Brotherhood, and I think Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade it's another fantastic book. Next we have Lords of the Sith. This was cool because you have Vader and Palpatine. They get stranded on Ryloth, and the whole plan's out to get them. Very, very interesting book, and Vader is still trying to figure out who he truly is with the dynamic between him and Palpatine. Like I said, awesome book as well. And one thing I also like is that no one really knows that that Palpatine is a Sith Lord. So if anyone that gets caught seeing him use the Force, they gotta go. Next we have Catalysm. This book rules, and it's the endless night, the night of 1,000 tears. Books story that was we heard about in the other High Republic books. You see this. You see Axel Greylark, who is kind of working with the Path of the Open Hand, and then they become a different organization. This book is great. The nameless, a lot of stuff happens. This has been one of my favorite books lately, and Catalysm, I couldn't keep this book down. It was that good. Next, we have The Rising Storm. Rise of Storm was a great book. This is the second book into the High Republic. Basically, there's a Republic fair, kind of like a World's Fair. Gets attacked by the Nile. The Chancellor gets hurt. A lot of stuff happens in this book that makes it a very interesting. A lot of Jedis are kind of off-centered, but they're still trying to remain true to who they are as Jedi. This is a very, very interesting book as well. Star Wars Lost Stars was a very good book. This is like a Romeo and Juliet style book. Basically, you have one character. You have two characters. They grew up. They always loved flying. They both join the Empire. Both realize really what the Empire is, but one stays out of loyalty. The other joins the rebellion. And as the events of the original trilogy happen, and then post Return of the Jedi happens, and then it's just a fantastic book. Claudia Gray. This is what put her on the map for me as a Star Wars author. I love this book. It's incredible. So yeah, that's one of my favorite books for a very long time. And then I said I'm gonna start reading Star Wars books as a kid because I heard some really good things about Light of the Jedi. Light of the Jedi is an incredible Star Wars book. It really defined the era of the High Republic for me. It's why I was looking so forward to the Acolyte, to this Star Wars era. All the Jedi team up to move an asteroid to protect the planet of Hetzel, which is how Avar Kriss becomes the hero of Hetzel. And then you have the beginning threat of the Nile, and this book does I love movies that set stuff up, and this is what the High Republic, Light of the Jedi, and is what got me hooked into this back into reading Star Wars books again. Guys, that ends my video of my Star Wars books ranking. What's your favorite Star Wars book? Whatever it is, comment below, let me know. And I stay pretty involved with the Star Wars books. Like I said, I watch a lot of sports. I read them in the in between time, and then yeah. So guys, what's your favorite Star Wars book? Comment below. Let me know. And guys, if you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, see more, and tell your friends about Easy Nation. Oh, too easy.